on this flip chart here, this is where you can get our presentation. I'm not sure if Instructure is going to be posting it somewhere else, but I also put it out here. So it's a tiny URL, and then it's just InstCon quiz. I don't know if it's case sensitive. I don't think it is, but it's not. I didn't think it was. So it's out there. You're welcome to go ahead and grab it so that you can see our presentation. This is working. So he already kind of talked a little bit about what we do in Elmbrook. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what Elmbrook is. We're in Wisconsin. We're just west of more Wisconsin people. Yay! We're just west of Milwaukee. We're made up of Elm Grove and Brookfield, so hence Elmbrook. We have about 7,000 students. We have about 10 schools, a little over 500 teachers. We are fortunate enough that our district has made the decision to have someone that has a technology coach role, at least for a fraction of their time, in every single school. So that's been very, very helpful with our rollout in Canvas. One of the things our district did is they started this initiative. And Wisconsin people, you've probably seen this before, but we did the Personalized Learning Initiative. And there is the Institute for Personalized Learning that's based in southeastern Wisconsin. And they developed this Honeycomb, which was kind of the framework for how to do personalized learning. And I'm going to start by talking a little bit about this framework and a little bit about personalized learning, because this was the driver for us to even choose Canvas in the first place. And then it's also a driver to get people on board by using quizzes. So I'm going to kind of use this as kind of a framework so you have an understanding of why we even got to where we got to. Likes me being closer. So in the center of that honeycomb, because it's pretty overwhelming when you first look at it, are the core components, the three different options: the learner profiles, customized learning paths, and proficiency-based progress. So the learner profiles is really a way for teachers to start figuring out how to transform the learning that's happening in their classroom. How can they develop learner profiles so that they really get to know the students, not only just what they know about the content of the course, but what is the interest? What is the passion? What is their background? What are their likes and dislikes? That type of thing. And also having the student get to know that about themselves. Customized learning paths. How can we have these standards that they have to become proficient in. How can we give them an opportunity to make choices to get to that proficiency, but customize the path to get there? And then the last core component is proficiency-based progress. So this we see a little bit more like in a math class. Like you are allowed to progress in that math class once you demonstrate proficiency at a certain level for that standard, and then you can move on. So those were the three core components. Quite overwhelming for our teachers. Some of our teachers, we asked them to pick one of them. Start out with one if you can. A lot of them started to choose learner profiles. And in the learner profiles, this past school year, I work at the two high schools in our district. One high school chose to do a book study with some of their staff, and I highly recommend this book if you've never seen it before. It's How to Personalize Learning, and they use UDL, or Universal Design for Learning, as the lens for their learner profile. Let's look at how students like to access information, how do they like to engage with the information that's going on in the class, and how do they like to express their proficiency. This book has some super, super resources. It's got in-depth questions for all of those different ways you can get that information about your students. And then once you get that information, what do you do with it? Because it can be overwhelming. I mean, we're in a school district where you have 30 kids in a classroom. And if you're a high school teacher, we're on a block schedule, so they'll teach 3 classes usually, so they have 90 kids for that one term. At the middle school, they're teaching 5 or 6 classes, so they might be working with 150 kids. Well, how do you manage it? So this book really kind of helped some of our teachers step through that process if they really wanted to dive into the learner profile piece. Oh, and then they used Canvas quizzes to collect this information. Forgot to mention that. Some teachers were saying, hey, that's way too much. I can't go there yet. I'm not ready. And so a lot of stuff about personalized learning is readiness, not only readiness for the student, but readiness for the teacher. And so some of them started looking at the elements around the core components that were the learning and teaching elements. And they looked at rapid cycle feedback, or they looked at customized responsive instruction. So some of the teachers that I work with the rapid cycle feedback, is they were looking at their classes saying, how can I use Canvas quizzes to eliminate some of the things I do during class and do it outside of class? For example, the real easy sell was for some world language teachers and some English teachers to say, you know what? Stop the grammar quizzes and the vocab quizzes and stop some of those quizzes that you're taking precious class time for. And how can we use Canvas quizzes to do that outside of class? Give those kids multiple times to do that stuff. So that's where the rapid cycle feedback was a great way for them to kind of dive in and figure out how that all worked, because the kids got feedback right away. They got it or they didn't, and then they were given opportunities to take it again. The other element here was the customized responsive instruction. I've worked with some social studies teachers in particular that I can think of where they would do a lot of formative assessments using Canvas quizzes. They would do reading checks and video checks to try to figure out what did the kid know before they came into their classroom, so that they could customize their instruction for the students there. Rather than just kind of guessing this is where the students have been in the past, this is actually using the Canvas quizzes to get detailed information before they even come into your classroom. So those were two different areas that was a really great way for our teachers to start using Canvas quizzes and for them to basically buy into Canvas. So we're going to skip that one, and now I'm going to hand it over to Megan. And Megan's one of our business ed teachers, and she's going to go into more detail of the classes she teaches and some of the features in the quizzes and how she uses it. And then I'll come back and show you some more examples of some things that I've experienced working with some of the teachers at two different high schools.
Hi, everybody. I'm Megan. Let's talk a little bit about my classroom. I teach grades 9 through 12 in a blended class environment, so it's very possible that I have grades 9 through 12 in the same classroom at the same time. I teach mostly elective courses, so things like leadership, entrepreneurship, marketing, but I also teach personal finance, which is now a graduation requirement for Elmbrook schools. It's a little different than my normal elective world. But my classroom is very personalized project-based learning, which can sometimes mean that I have 30 students who are at different places at different times, which when we first started, this whole personalized learning initiative was horrifying as a teacher. I'm like, how do you manage 30 kids at different places doing different things? And Canvas quizzes has really helped me with that in terms of getting kids' feedback faster. So one of the things that I use them for a lot is pre-tests in my classes to kind of figure out where they're at because of that 9 through 12 blend with some of the required courses. So like the one that's up here, we linked everything in here in pictures versus links because we didn't want to share student information. But this is for personal finance, which is a graduation requirement. But given the pretest data allows me to customize my course a little bit, because sometimes one term I'll have a class that's predominantly seniors, and they've taken economics and they know a little bit more. And then the next term I get a class that's predominantly freshmen, and they're like, I don't get it. How, you buy things? My mom does that. And so it's a very different experience depending upon the grade level and the type of kid. But the data that I get back from doing those pretests really helps know those students. And then for myself, I actually give the same test at the end in order to assess growth, which has been really helpful with some of our partners. We partner with local businesses for some of our courses, and to be able to show them the growth from point A to point B has been really helpful in having them fund some of our initiatives. The second thing is what we would call an audit test. It's an accounting word where we're checking our work on a regular basis. It's formative. It's not a summative thing, but they can take the test as many times as they want, the quiz as many times as they want. And one of the things that I see students doing sometimes 10, 12 times is when we teach taxes. You guys love taxes, right? They're so fun. But students really struggle with following the directions line by line, trying to figure out how that works. And because they're all at different places, could I collect them, check them all, and then return them? I could. But this way, if you're ready, You do your first case, you type in your answers, and it tells you exactly which lines you've made a mistake. And then immediately you can go back and fix those problems and ask those questions versus a week later. That's part of that rapid cycle feedback that Joanie was talking about. So it is formative. It doesn't go in the gradebook as a grade, but this way they can check their work and assess their own understanding. There's other formative assessments that I use in quizzes. Sometimes, like for the one that's up here, they're figuring out how much it costs to use credit versus buying something with cash. And so they're using a calculator out on the internet, putting the scenario in, and then typing their answers in the box. But another one of those things that retakes if necessary, we're big on retakes in Elmbrook. We do a lot of that because if they don't understand, they go back, remediate, and then they take it again. But again, with the rapid cycle feedback, once they submit the quiz, they immediately know where they went wrong. And for example, with this quiz specifically, there's one section where they're taking out a cash advance, which has an extra fee, right? They don't quite understand that piece, and then they know that they need to ask a question, which has been really helpful in identifying who's kind of where. I also use quizzes as surveys. You can change them, change the settings so that they're ungraded surveys, and allows them to express preferences. Sometimes it's on a topic for a presentation. This one in particular was we were gonna do a huge project, a 30-page research paper. And so I allowed them to tell me kind of who they wanted to work with, and if there was anybody they absolutely could not work with, and they had explained why. So it wasn't like, I just don't like Joanie. Like, you gotta give me a reason. And sometimes there's a lot of social things that go on in high school that we as teachers don't know about. And this gives them an opportunity to tell us about that stuff and makes the group work a little bit more safe space for them. Go ahead.
If you're using quizzes for a survey, for example, can you set it up to be anonymous?
You can, yes. Yeah, so depending upon what you're trying to use it for, like for this, I needed to know who they are. But you can make it anonymous, you can make it graded, you can make it ungraded, you can make it have a survey where it just gets completion points. So they're going to go through the questions, and no matter what, as long as they did it, they're going to get 5 points in the grade book. There's a lot of flexible options. One of the other things I really like is the quiz statistics. So after they have taken that pretest, this is right from the pretest, I can see kind of where the distribution of students are, an average score, high score, low score, deviation, how long they spent on this particular quiz. And then you can, if you want to go in more depth per student, you can go to student analysis and pull that up. But this kind of helps me see, 60%, the quiz that they do for the pretest is from a national organization called the Jumpstart Coalition, and that's pretty much the average. 60% is where students are going to score. But that means that these kids that are up here are going to need a little bit more stuff, a little bit more knowledge, a little bit more extra, because they've mastered a lot of what's already going on. You can also look at the question breakdown per question, which is really nice. So remember when you used to run those Scantrons and you'd get like the little report at the end? Same kind of idea with a lot more information. So I can see not only the question, but who responded what, how many responded correctly. And then the discrimination index is kind of interesting because what it tells you is how much people who answered this question determines how well they did on the overall quiz. Can you say that one more time? Yes. So the discrimination index, this little plus 0.38, will tell you what this particular question, the indication is of doing well on the overall quiz. So if you got this right, are you going to do well overall on the whole quiz? Which is kind of helpful to know, because if you have one that's a huge outlier, then maybe you've got something weird going on. I saw a hand over there.
I was just going to ask, what's the range of that? Does it go to like 1 to?
I've never seen it past 1.
So it's kind of like a correlation coefficient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
So what number do you want it to be?
Yeah. Anything plus is good. Mine are mostly around here, but I don't write these questions. I'll say that right out. I did not write this question. our pretest comes from a company that we work with for personal finance, so they're the ones who wrote the questions. But generally for this quiz, this is about as high as it goes for this particular quiz.
You know, and one of the things on this slide that I use all the time in Canvas is there's a little question mark here that if you're not really sure what some of these things are, they do an awesome job giving you some help right inside there. And if you just click on the question mark, it'd explain all that kind of stuff about the discrimination index, that type of thing. So look for that throughout Canvas. If you haven't seen that before, that's super, super helpful. So now I'm going to talk a little bit globally about some ways that we've used Canvas quizzes to really work well at our high school. One of the things that came up was security concerns, like what if they're cheating? You know, what are we going to deal with? How are we going to deal with that? And we looked into some products, but like a lot of districts, you know, we have budget limitations. We can't buy all these little extras. Like there's a product called Respondus that gives you a lockdown browser. We couldn't afford it. You know, you had to make a decision of what we could afford and what we can't afford, and we didn't go there. So we started looking at, well, what's built into Canvas that can help us determine, and then also, if these are formative assessments and they did cheat on it, you know, how big of a deal is it? Are you going to find that out with the instruction that happens in the classroom, or something that's going to be formative a little bit later before they get to the summative? So some of it is like, well, how important is it? There is something called a view log, and right now in the current product, it's a little buried in the current product. I know with Quizzes Next is coming, and I'm really looking forward to seeing all the different announcements that are going to happen this week. I've had a chance to see a little bit about it just because of my connection with Ryan, who introduced us. And they're going to try and make this a little bit easier, I think, to get to. It's not going to be so buried. Right now, if you want to see this, when you go into a quiz, there's an option to moderate the quiz. And when you go in to moderate the quiz, you see all of the students that took the quiz. You see how many attempts. You see the amount of time. When you click on an individual in the moderate quiz, there's a link to the view log. So what we did was I just randomly picked out a student that I know was doing something on a computer that probably wasn't the quiz the whole entire time. And so I picked him out and I just took a snapshot of his view log. And so you can see when he started, when he answered, the time code for it, and then all of a sudden he stopped viewing the Canvas quiz. And then all of a sudden he resumed again. And then he answered question 13. So there, I mean, I did cut out that little piece in there. He was doing some more answering of questions. But you see that there is something that happened where he navigated away. So this was very, very helpful. We are a district that are one-to-one in Chromebooks, grades 3 through 12, so we're fortunate enough that these students have Chromebooks. This was when they were using desktops. We do still have a few labs, computer labs in our schools. They're starting to go away. This was actually done in one of the computer labs with one of the teachers. But that view log, very, very helpful. So if you've got questions about what a student's been up to, yes?
So is that just if they move away from that page, or is it they like a new tab, or what's the actual?
So she's asking if they're moving away from that page or if it's a new tab. They're actually moving, it'll show that it's moving, telling you it's moving to a different tab, or they're going somewhere else in Canvas.
So
Either way, they're leaving that quiz page before they hit submit. I'm sorry, there's a couple of different hands up here. What's the question?
I said, so is this embedded in Canvas then?
This is part of Canvas, and it's free. Yes.
Is this part of the mobile app?
I'm not sure if it's in the mobile app. My guess is if they take the quiz, there might be something in the view log, but I haven't tested that. Because our students use Chromebooks, we don't have them do a lot of quizzes on the mobile app, and so I haven't tested that, so I can't answer that. Does anyone else know? Yes?
I was just at the app meeting right before this. They have a new teacher
Yes.
app that's
Just came out.
now. They never mentioned anything about this, but they are having another session tomorrow talking specifically about the Canvas teacher app. So that might be something.
Yep. I got a notice in my email that the Canvas Teacher app is out. It's just called Canvas Teacher. And it looks like it'd be a really good way to communicate with students through the apps, because I know some of our teachers have used other products like Remind 101 or something else because they like the mobile device thing. But yeah, the Canvas Teacher app is something to look into. Was there another question?
That was my question.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay, so view log was one thing. And like I said, we use Chromebooks in our district. And one of the reasons that we went to Chromebooks is because of the state mandated tests that our freshmen and sophomores do that have to be on a computer. We didn't have enough computer labs. We had to figure out a way that we were going to be able to do it. We needed them to have a tool in their hands that we'd be able to do that. And because of that, because we were having kids take these state-mandated tests on Chromebooks, we had to come up with a way to have a kind of a kiosk mode for that. So then we started saying, well, if we can do that for the state-mandated tests, why can't we do that for the Canvas quizzes? So our district, and I don't know the technology behind this, but if you're interested, at the end of this presentation, I have my email, and I can definitely get more information from the person who set this up. But so for our Chromebooks, when our students go to our Chromebooks, before they actually log in, they hit apps, and then we have canvas.elmbrook or canvas-elmbrook schools. And what that does is it's pretty much a lockdown browser. It just lets them see Canvas and log into Canvas. They can't go to other things inside of Chrome browser. They can only go to Canvas. And then to get out of that, they have to shut down the computer, and then they can log in and use their Chromebook like normal. And it's free. Yes?
When the students are looking at Canvas through the kiosk, could a teacher tell by looking at the screen if they've accessed it through the kiosk versus just logging in?
Question was, can a teacher tell if they're accessing it through this versus just the regular login? When you actually, if you were looking at their Chromebooks, you could tell how they accessed it. So this is really something that they would use when they're in the classroom. It may not be something that you use outside because you wouldn't necessarily be able to tell. But if they're in the classroom, this is how we have them take the quizzes that way. Yes?
Do you know if you're using single sign-on in order to get into Canvas, or whether you use a Canvas login line itself?
The question was, are we using single sign-on for Canvas? And the answer is yes, we are using single sign-on. So they just use their regular username and password to get into Canvas that they use for the network. Yep.
If they go through the kiosk and looking at the quiz from the business, she had a link to a tool, would they still be able to access that link?
If it was something inside, so she's asking if they can access the link that's also in Canvas. This gives them access to Canvas completely. So if they go to the quiz and start the quiz, the view log will be pretty much going through and showing you what the students would do. If they start going somewhere else into Canvas, you will get that they've stopped the quiz and they've gone somewhere else, and then they resumed to the quiz. So you would be able to see that.
Is it Megan?
Yeah.
Yes.
An external link to like a calculator on one of her.
Yeah, I had an external link on my page, and that's a formative quiz. Sorry. That's a formative quiz, so I wouldn't use the kiosk mode for that. If I was going to, I would try to find a tool that I could embed within Canvas, because they can go anywhere within the Canvas. They just can't go to an outside website. And I mean, for those kind of problems, they probably could just use a calculator, like a regular calculator, but.
So these were a couple of hurdles that we had trying to convince teachers to use Canvas and quizzes. The view log helped a lot. This kiosk helped a lot to get some of those teachers to buy in and start using it. Some other things is, creating Canvas quizzes and dealing with question banks takes a lot of time. So that was another thing where they're like, I don't have time for this. So we started being like, okay, how can we be creative to figure out ways to make this a little bit easier for you? We know that there's going to be a lot of time on the front end, but how can we collaborate, use our PLC time, use other connections that you have when you're co-planning a class with other teachers to be able to create these things. So one thing that helped is showing the teachers that the way you set up question banks, and this is going to be, there's some new things coming out in questions next. I'm excited about our quiz deck next. So I'm excited to see what they're doing with question banks because they're making some improvements on it. But currently in the current product, when you create a question bank, it gets kind of stuck in that course. if you bookmark that question bank, and then you see over here, you see my bookmarked banks, that allows you to have access to that question bank for any courses that you as a teacher teach. Yeah. So think about some things that you might use in multiple courses. Like early on when I was talking about learner profiles, a lot of those questions aren't for a specific course. They would be used in all of your courses potentially. So this would be a way to get access to those question banks in any of the courses that you teach. Some of our teachers also, even though, if I was teaching something and Meg and I wanted to collaborate, she was showing me some stuff. I have not helped her with her personal finance class. I probably should have taken it. I could use some help. But she did an online summer class, and I really wanted to dig in and see what she was doing, so she made me a teacher in her course. So we've had some teachers do that, where they make other teachers, even though they have no teaching responsibilities for that course, they make them teachers in it to allow them to have access to different tools. Yes, question?
So would that be then a way that you could share the questions without sharing them to comments, is by having your partner be a co-teacher?
And keep it, yep.
And I mean, something that I'll add, and this does take an element of trust. For personal finance being a graduation requirement, everyone in our department teaches this course. We have one Canvas course that we're all teachers on, and we add our sections to the same course. And so it takes an element of trust. You have to trust the people who are in your course because if they delete something for themselves, they delete it for everyone. But in terms of working as a small department with a new graduation requirement, it has been really good collaboration, and we're not duplicating each other's work, which has been really cool.
So my question is, as a co-teacher, are you allowed to change the question, for example?
Yes, as a co-teacher, the question was, if you're a co-teacher, are you allowed to change the question? Yes. And that's kind of what Megan was kind of alluding to, is you got to really trust the person that you're allowing to co-teach that course with you so that they don't mess things up for you. So that was one thing. The other thing that we were taking a look at, and the new Quizzes Next, I think, is going to be better at this. But what we built in our district is, I had some English teachers that said, we all teach To Kill a Mockingbird, and we want to do these quizzes on just reading checks to see if the kids are really reading it and understanding it. But we have, 2 or 3 different teachers that teach English 9. How can we build this without all that work? By each individual teacher. So what we did is, the way our Canvas is set up is we've got sub-accounts. And so we have our big district, Elmbrook district, and then we have a sub-account for the schools. So up at the top, you'll see, Brookfield Central. Then we have a sub-account for each department at the high school level. So you see English. So what we were able to do is I sat down with our tech team and said, how can we give a little bit more admin rights to Canvas for these teachers to really be able to collaborate and build it without having to dig into their courses and do the same thing. So what it allowed them to do is it gives them the admin little icon on the side. They can go into question banks, and then these 2 teachers basically built question banks together and then just put them into their courses. And they really liked that. I'm trying to get them to do that with rubrics. We're not there yet. but question banks, I've been able to sell them on. Yes, question?
Is there a reason to do that versus just putting it in the comments?
Putting in the comments, from my understanding, and I know that things are constantly updated in this world, you can put quizzes in the comments, but I don't think you can put question banks. Am I correct? Okay, good. You can put a quiz there, but you can't do the question bank. So that's kind of why you wouldn't take that question bank and put it into the comments. Another question?
So you guys have that for the English department for that specific course. Could you do something to where all the teachers that teach English, all their classes go under the English account? So if you have common courses like English 1, you could do that. But if you teach journalism and you're the only teacher, you can kind of do your own. I guess you can kind of do your own thing on that. But as opposed to just having an individual account for every single teacher, could you just do a departmental account? I guess is one.
So like a department, are you asking for a department course or a departmental
Yeah, I mean, 'cause
account?
in a department, you would have an American history course, and so instead of 3 teachers having a American history, it's already just built in that these three teachers teach it. They already have the rights to it, and then that you can go from there.
Yeah, there's something that I found out yesterday. So if you have he's asking, if you have multiple teachers teaching the same course, how can you build it to really save time and make it so you have access to all those same resources? So similar to Megan's example with personal finance, where they have multiple teachers. Someone told me yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to dig into it, but another person said there's something in Canvas called blueprint courses, and it sounds fabulous. There's some session for it. I haven't looked. Oh, it happened. Hopefully it'll happen again, or catch the video, because all of these things are being videotaped. I'm being recorded right now. So everything will be recorded. But I've heard about blueprint courses. So I think that might be helpful for the scenario that he was talking about. Another question?
So one thing that we're doing, and now I'm wondering whether or not there's a problem with the way we're doing it, because we're just starting Canvas next year, is when we have multiple teachers teaching the same course, they're creating a common sandbox. And they're working and building all of their items in a sandbox together, and then they can move them to their individual courses. Is there a problem with doing it that way?
So she's talking about you've got multiple teachers teaching the same course. They're creating like a sandbox course, correct, is what you're saying? A sandbox course, and then each individual teacher would have their own individual course. I've had some teachers that really like that. It's another way of doing it. I don't think it's more work. It's just another way of doing it. So I've had a PLC of some teachers that do world history that did the same exact thing and found it incredibly valuable. That way, they've got that one course that's specialized, and then they do the copy of the course and copy down. What's cool about the blueprint, according to what this person told me yesterday, her name was Joanne. I don't know sorry, I forgot her last name. But she said that in the blueprint course, what's cool is when you change that blueprint course, that change automatically is supposed to go down into the copy of the course, which to me sounds fabulous, because that would be the problem with doing that sandbox version. You'll update your individual course, but your sandbox is not going to reflect that. Yep, another question?
In terms of professional development, what have you guys seen when you've had teachers in a common, work to build a common assessment? Was that a struggle, or was it like, okay, we're in this, we're going to make this quiz, and they're working together, and you see a lot of growth in professional development that way? Because we talk a lot about common assessment, but sometimes that time is not always there.
Yeah.
But you have the course, and you kind of have a starting point to go forward with that. So have you guys seen a lot of growth in that area when you have common assessments in those classes?
So he's asking, when you have common assessments in these classes and you're doing this work together, are you seeing a lot of growth? Absolutely. Anytime we see our teachers working in PLCs or collaborating, we've seen tremendous growth in our teachers. Beyond just having technology coaches, we have instructional coaches in our schools, which is also been super beneficial for them to work with someone like myself to kind of figure out where they want to go and help them move. Some people have to make baby steps. Some people can take leaps. It all depends on that individual.
And I would add to that, we have a Thursday early release model in our district, and so we spend a lot of Thursday time working on Canvas, and then we also have weekly PLC meetings with our teams, and so a lot of that time is dedicated to working on stuff like this.
Okay, I want to show just a couple more things. We have about 5 minutes. I will definitely stay after because I think we have lunch next, so if you've got more questions, we also have our contact information, so I just want to show you a few more things about what we've been doing with question banks. One other huge buy-in is to have the teachers, I'm not aware of, we have a school with 1,300 students, and I go to 2 high schools with 1,300 students. So I'm working with 200 teachers. I don't know all the curricular resources they have access to. So one of the things that I ask them about, if they're interested, is there something with the curriculum that you received that has question banks? And how can we export them for the testing software that you might have received and import it into Canvas. So that was a great way to get some social studies teachers in. Like I have some econ teacher and I have some other social studies teachers that were like, there's no way I'm typing all that information. But when I show them that you can go into the settings of a course and import, there's something called a QTI zip file is what really worked well. You import that into your course, and you can select the question bank that those questions get dumped into. Huge sell point for those teachers to get them using it. So that's been really helpful.
I'll add to that. I use this for a class I teach for the technical college, so I have to give a specific test. It imports graphics better than I could have ever hoped for. So they have to, they get a little screenshot of whatever program, Word, Excel, and they have to answer questions based on those screenshots. And I was pretty afraid of how it was going to look once we imported it, and I did very, very little editing on the back end from that QTI file.
Now, if the curricular resource is more than 10 years old, you might have some challenges. We had a little challenges with some of the econ software where he's dusting off the CD, saying, can we put this in Canvas? Had some problems with the graphs and the questions, but this really, really helped to get the teachers using the product a little bit more.
And matching questions don't come over.
Matching questions, yeah, they don't come over very well was a comment up here. I believe that matching might hopefully be a little bit better in the quizzes next. Again, I'm really looking forward to hearing more about what that's going to look like. So to end, we're coming up on the last few minutes here. I want to give this information to you. Here's our email addresses. It's just my last name, which is spelled really funky. I'm sorry, it's my husband's fault. Ruth and then J at elmbrookschools.org. Megan's is super easy. It's just Fisher M at Elmbrook Schools. And then here's our Twitter handles. You are more than welcome. I will definitely stick around if you've got more questions. Megan will stick around. You can email us questions if they come up later. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure to present to you today.